Welcome to Dental Skool, a podcast for business-minded dentists. Your host, Billy Rickman.
Welcome to Dental Skool. My name is Billy Rickman, and this is episode number 1 and a podcast for business-minded dentists. I'm super excited to get started with this podcast because I feel like there's a real need for it in the industry right now. The industry is changing so much and has changed so much over the last 5 to 10 years. And now more than ever, there is a really strong need for you to understand obviously the importance of how to do the key aspects of your job in the dental industry. But how do I also operate as a business person in this industry? Now, if you're sitting here thinking, well, I don't own a business, it doesn't matter. This podcast isn't just for business owners. Yes, there's going to be a ton of content. If you are a practice owner, there is going to be a ton of content for you to use and utilize straight away in your business. But even if you are still studying, if you're a first year, maybe you've been in the industry for a long time and you're a senior dentist in your business, or whether you own a practice, as we said, or own a group, or whether or not you're part of the big corporate chains that are now interstate across Australia, we're going to be diving into some key topics that are going to help you with your growth and career. So what are we going to talk about? Firstly, marketing. Marketing is a massive, massive passion of mine. Now, a quick background of who I am and where I come from. I have been in business now for around about 12 or 13 years. I have been a trainer and presenter for huge audiences all over the world. Specifically, one of the key things I talk about is in selling. I'm going to talk about selling. If you're thinking right now, oh, selling, I know it's a taboo word in the industry, so I'm going to discuss that soon about how that relates to you in business. But that's something I'm really, really passionate about. And one of my key events that I take around Australia now is Sales Mastery for Dental. If you haven't been yet, then make sure you come along. But I've been doing that for years because you know what, with sales, I said I was going to talk about it later, but I'll just quickly touch on it now. Sales in the industry, the word sales in the dental industry is still considered quite taboo. There's still a lot of stigma attached to it. And that predominantly is because we are medical professionals. We don't sell. Well, like it or not, you do sell. Selling is nothing more than a transaction taking place. So you are providing a service, they are giving you some money for that. That is sales. The difference is unethical sales versus ethical selling. And again, the reason why you don't like the word sales is because you're a medical professional and you have this mindset, or you've been told that we don't sell. And that's okay. We're going to break that down and demystify some of those myths around that. But the other side of it is because the media portrays sales with a very negative stereotype. If you watch Wolf of Wall Street, for example, it shows how he's a great salesperson, but he ripped off all these people and made millions from it. If you turn on a Current Affair or Today Tonight, if those shows are still running, you see that someone's been scammed, or there was a sleazy salesperson that ripped off some elderly lady or something like that. And all of this permeates through into your mind, and all of a sudden your subconscious, whether or not it's consciously or subconsciously, you see sales as a bad thing. My job as a sales trainer and a presenter and educator in that area is to, especially in dental, is how do I ethically sell better, right? So some of the words that we use around the word sales in the industry is, you may hear people say, oh, we want to increase our case acceptance, or we want to make better recommendations, or we want to get more people to say yes. All of these are just phrases that dance around the central subject of sales. And what you're essentially doing is saying, we don't sell, we don't like selling, but I like doing these other things because I can see the link between that and being ethical, right? So one of the things we're going to be discussing along this podcast journey is how to sell ethically and how to do it well. And really all this ethical selling is adding value to somebody's life. If you add value to somebody's life, that's ethical selling. If you take away value from somebody's life, so you deliver a treatment that they didn't need, for example, and you take their money from that, then that's unethical. So, but how do you do it ethically? How do you do it well? How do you build trust? How do you build rapport? How do you get more people to say, yes, I want to work with you as an individual or as the business? So sales is something we're going to be discussing along the way. The other thing I alluded to before is marketing. Now, when I first started in business 12 or 13 years ago, it was the creation of social media. Social media was just sort of starting out. Google Ads had been around for a while, so digital marketing had been around for a little while, but social media advertising hadn't. In fact, you couldn't even get a business page. There was no such thing as a Facebook business page, and certainly there wasn't Instagram or TikTok. Those things hadn't been around yet. And so one of the things I found out early on is that, well, firstly, you could create an individual page, or what you would see as a personal page, and just change the name to your business. And back in those days, you could just get followers. You could create a post And once you put that post up saying bookings available, you would get a ton of business from that. It was simple. You didn't have to pay money for it. The people who followed your page or were your friends, they would see it and they would engage with you. Then all of a sudden things started to change and Facebook introduced the boost option. Now, if you're old enough like me, I'm almost 42 now. If you're old enough like me, you'll remember that when Facebook transitioned, that you went from having a personal page to now having a business page. And then you had to boost posts in order to get a high level of engagement or high interaction with that post. Things started to change. And it was at that point that I realized that if I'm going to succeed in business, this is now the new landscape. This is now the direction in business is going. And so I'm going to have to immerse myself in this. So I learned from the very best, very early on. I did a ton of courses, part of a ton of coaching programs that specifically talked about how to do advertising digitally, how to attract your ideal patient, how to implement great referral programs, how to not just rely on word of mouth, but how do I create word of mouth? And I learned, like I said, from the very, very best. I learned from Russell Brunson. I learned from Billy Jean. I did some of Grant Cardone's courses, even though he was more sales-based. I learned from a person called Alex Hormozi. I don't know if you know Alex Hormozi. He's now valued at around $250 million. That's his net worth, $250 million US dollars. And I was lucky enough to do have a 2.5 hour conversation with him, which is on my YouTube channel if you want to go and watch that. Now, the interview was only for around about an hour. But after we finished recording, I ended up speaking to him a lot more candidly for about an hour and a half, and I learned so much from him. And during my journey through all of this experience, I've learned exactly how to do marketing right. There is a specific way to do it, much like anything, right? There's a way to do it and a way not to do it. And so I learned all of these things a lot through trial and error. I've probably spent over $50 million now at this point in time when I'm recording this, over around $50 million on online advertising. So I've split tested and I've trialed and tested a lot of different strategies and I know it works. And we're going to be discussing a lot of content around marketing. Again, circling back a second to the start where I said it doesn't matter whether or not you're an individual or a business. If you're listening to this and you're thinking marketing, how is that related to me? I don't own a business. Well, one of the episodes that's coming up real soon, in fact, I just finished recording this, is with somebody who has implemented personal branding into obviously his own success. So he learned very, very early on that if I can brand myself, if I can get recognized for who I am amongst my peers and through a wider audience in my area, then I can attract a lot more people who want to do business with me. I don't have to now go out looking for them. I already have a ton of people who are wanting to do business with me. And so a lot of the topics we're going to be talking about is not just about the direct marketing, so from business to patient. It's also about how do I market myself? How do I break through the noise? How do I become recognizable so that people are wanting to come and see me because they've seen a video of me, or they've read something that I've wrote, or they see some photos that people have shared online. And now instead of me looking for them, they're coming to look for me. So marketing and sales are going to be very big on this podcast, what we're going to be talking about in specific strategies. Now, one thing I will say before I go on to some of the other things we're going to talk about, one thing I will say is that with each of these podcast episodes as well, I don't want to just be someone who superficially scratches the surface on some of these topics. Every single episode that we talk about, that we go through, I want to make sure that you have genuine takeaways, real meat, something that you can immediately implement either into your own career as an individual, or you can put into practice in your business. So make sure that you always, whenever you're listening to some of these podcasts, again, whether or not you're a video person and you like to watch these on YouTube, or whether or not you're a podcast person who likes to watch these whilst you're walking around or doing other things, always try to make sure you've got notes handy either on your phone or what have you, because we're going to be talking about some specific strategies to take away. Now, strategy is another topic that I'm going to be discussing at length. What is strategy? Well, if you've been in business as long as I have, again, much like marketing, you realize that if you do things in a certain order, in a certain way, then you get a predictable outcome. It's like a motor vehicle on a factory line. If you take the nuts and bolts at the very first stage, and then you move it along the factory line, and the robots do all of those things, then by the end of that, you have a car. And let's say it's a Tesla. So now it looks like a Tesla. And the next one that's coming along that factory line, it turns out exactly like the other one. Why? Because there's specific steps. In this case, they're automated through computers and robotics and things like that. but there are specific steps that are repeated. And when you repeat them in the same way, over and over in the same order, then you get a predictable outcome. And that's exactly the same with business strategy. There is a way to succeed in business and there's a way to not. There's a way, I won't call it failure, but we'll call it learning. There's a way to keep learning in business, and you, instead of fast tracking your progress, you actually slow things down. Business strategy is something I am very, very passionate about. It's something, again, that I've immersed myself in, something I've learned, again, from the very best around the world, and also my own personal experience, and we're going to be discussing a lot about that. And the last one is about leadership and management. Leadership and management is crucial. And so, again, why would you want to have leadership management training if you're an individual? Firstly, in order to succeed in anything, you have to have leadership and management of yourself. You have to be disciplined. It means getting up and doing the things every single day, regardless of what frame of mind you're in, whatever mindset you're in, whatever's going on in your life, doing the same things, the things you need to do every single day. Having responsibility, personal responsibility to do those things. That is leadership of yourself. That is management of your own emotions and your own actions. And if you get hold of that, now you can start to grow very, very quickly. Now, if you are a practice owner, or a practice manager, or someone who was aspiring to be in those areas, then leadership and management of other people is crucial. Now, what I will say is that in order to succeed as a leader and manager of other people, then you firstly need to get your personal leadership and management in place. You can't be telling people to do things if they're looking at you and saying, well, you don't do those things. You're not like that. It's like going to a PT who's massively overweight or unhealthy, and then them telling you that you need to have a better diet, or you need to work out more, or you need to work out harder. And like, you'll do it maybe, but in the back of your mind, you're thinking, yeah, but you're not doing it. People will follow you if you lead by example. Okay, so leadership management firstly comes from within, and secondly, there are keys and strategies, exactly as I've said with all the other categories, topics so far. There are ways in which to do it and ways not to do it, and we're going to be discussing those specific strategies for leadership and management. So the last thing I want to touch on in this first episode, because today's episode is really just an introduction into the podcast. What are we going to be talking about? Well, how's it going to be delivered? What are the topics? You know, I spoke about having some people looking for one-on-one conversations and things like that. But the last question that has to be asked is why? Why should we now invest our time to learning this information? Well, the reality is the dental industry, as I mentioned earlier, has changed dramatically. It's gone from brick and mortar, residential properties, kids' drawings on the wall to what it is now. And the reality is that for those who don't immerse themselves in this now, for those who don't learn these skills now, for those of you who don't learn how to brand yourself and learn the skills of social media, if you don't know how to market to get new patients into your business, if you don't learn how to effectively communicate and sell to your patients, then in 5 years' time, you're going to be left behind. You're going to be in the dust. And I can tell you this firsthand because some of our clients that we work with, so I work for, my company is called The Media Anchor. And as I said, we do sales training events and sales coaching, sales consulting. But the other part of it is we do marketing. So we look after marketing for clients. So if you're a dental practice and you want to attract more patients for smile makeovers, for example, then we run those campaigns. We build them for you, we create the strategy, and we deliver that, and we do all the optimization and things like that. And some of the clients that we work with are some of the biggest businesses in dental. And so I can tell you, without telling you names, without going into the specifics of it, I can tell you that some of these major, massive organizations now are investing a ton of money and time and all of their resources at their disposal to make sure that they grow and they take over the areas that they're coming into. They're looking to take your patients. They're looking to take your sales. And I don't say this to create fear. In fact, as you can probably tell by my mannerism so far, I'm a very optimistic person. I'm a very passionate person. I always believe that the glass is half full. But we also sometimes have to be realists. We also have to look at the landscape, look at the economy, look at the industry and say, what is the direction that we're going? Okay, and I can tell you from these personal conversations that it's going to be cutthroat. This next couple of years is going to be cutthroat. And the people that will survive are the people that understand that you have to be great as a clinician. You have to know your treatments. You have to know the intricacies of dental. But it's not enough. Because another example I always use is that it's no point having a restaurant with the best chef if nobody knows you exist. All you have is wasted food and an expensive chef. In order to succeed in today's market, to continue growth, you also have to understand the business side of things. And business is marketing, business is sales, business is strategy, business is leadership and management. And that is why we're going to be delivering this content to you through these podcasts and through these videos, and why I'm so passionate, because I love to see people grow. I love helping to see people succeed. So with that in mind, if you're excited by what you've heard so far, if you're like, yes, I want to get on board with this, if you want to get some free education, some free knowledge, some free learning on how to succeed in these different areas, then please make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. Whether or not you're on audio or video, hit that subscribe button. Make sure you're following along, and I'll be back with episode 2 very soon.